or meet with any of our guests since about mid-2020 December. Took a nice little break. I managed to stay off work, stay off my email, stay out of Slack. I think it took almost a full 2-week decompression. I took a bit of a staycation. Like a lot of Americans, I was not traveling around the country, but I did manage to hang out at home, spend a bunch of the time in the pool. Yes, I live in Florida. Sorry to rub that in to anyone's face who was sitting in the snow this Christmas. And frankly, I played a lot of video games, but it was nice to take some time off from a little bit of reality. We're starting off the year with a really, really, really great guest. Mark Pattison is someone that I got to know when I was a CMO of Scout, the sports media network. Mark has a really, really interesting background. He is a former NFL player. He played for, I believe it was the Raiders, the Rams, and the Saints. But he's also an entrepreneur. So he had a toy company called Front Porch Classics that he actually sold in 2006, made all these really, really cool kind of classic games. So he's got a great entrepreneurial side of him. And beyond all that, frankly, he's just cool as hell and fun to talk to. So he and I built a great friendship. And I'm embarrassed to say that actually, when I was a CMO of Scout, for anyone that knows me really well, it was a pretty strange job for me, given that I'm not like this diehard sports fan. And frankly, Mark was always coaching me to make sure I didn't sound like too much of an idiot when it came to American football. So since then, he's actually gone on to do something even more ambitious. If the guy hadn't already got a really cool story, he's actually trying to do the 7 summits. So he would actually be, I think, one of the first, if not the only NFL player to ever do it, and actually one of the oldest ones. But we're going to talk about all that in a minute, and you're going to get to know Mark on the first episode of Oh Shit for 2021. Let's do this. Oh shit. Right. So seeing a couple folks out there saying they can't see anything, I'm hoping that's limited to LinkedIn. If not, they're going to have a great audio experience. So I'm in kind of a podcast type feel today, Mark. Anyway, Mark, so glad you're here. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Freddie, man. I appreciate that intro. And I love the graphics of you, in the water and then blasting off to outer space, which is kind of like where we're all going right now, is just trying to figure out what's ahead.
I feel you on that one. So yeah, so it's a metaphor for the entrepreneurial life. It could be a bit of a ship show, as we like to say, but it's certainly some great blast off moments too. Mark, when we talked about what we wanted to talk about on today's show, we came up with this idea of kind of climbing mountains, and in your case, very literally, but for most other people, they mean that quite figuratively. Going out there and kind of taking on challenges in life, and how do you deal with that and how do you prepare for them, I think is a really, really interesting subject for anyone that is a leader or aspiring to be a leader. But let's start with the not so figurative side of it. Tell me about this 7 Summits challenge you're doing.
No, I appreciate it. Look, I think the kind of the setup to all this is that I grew up in Seattle, Washington. So we're all a product of our environment. You're down there in Florida. I know you're from the UK. And a lot of times you kind of grow up doing what's native to your particular region. And
our largest mountain is a trash heap, for the record. We actually call it Mount Trash. And it's literally that landfill thing near me.
Yeah, I love that. And one of my goals someday is to climb the highest mountains in every state. And I know that driving through, the South and hitting Florida, you just open your door and tap the ground, and then you
basically,
right? No,
you
but Seattle, Washington, the state of Washington is very mountainous, and they've got a couple main ranges up there. And I spent a lot of time when I was growing up with my dad, just climbing, nothing too serious, but just being, out in the forest, out in the woods, climbing these little mountains and that. And then about 10 years ago, I was going through a rough time, and I just really needed something. I needed a big goal to pull myself out of it. And I really tapped back to those times of I knew I wanted to do something great and I just couldn't figure it out. And then after, I don't know, it's probably a couple of years. And I know that we've all been there where you feel stuck and you're trying to figure out how you merge out of that. And I just started tapping back into what I knew. And I said, I want to do something athletic, and I want to do something that's amazing and grand and something that's way out there, kind of like your spaceship taking off. And I did some research, and I found that no NFL player had ever climbed the 7 summits. And so I think this is really important in the story for everybody. It doesn't matter if you're climbing mountains or you played in the NFL or these things, but it's really this common bond of that we all get stuck at some point in time in our life, and what do you do about it? And what I found is by setting a big ass goal that's out there, trying to become the first NFL player to ever do this, that it all of a sudden changed my focus, my energy from I'm in this bad place. How do I get out of it? Being stuck, all this stuff. And it now really started to change my focus on what is the goal and how do I get there and what are the steps that I need to do to accomplish that. And so where I sit today, fast forward, I've climbed 6 of the 7 of the tallest mountains around the world. And so it means I've been on 6 continents. I've actually done 2 of the mountains twice, Kilimanjaro and Denali up in Alaska. And last year, when I was set to go to Mount Everest, I was ready to launch in late March, and then of course COVID hit. It wreaked havoc on the world. The complete planet shut down, and so I had to take a major pivot and keep the same goal, but kind of reset what I was trying to do. I decided to really double down at that time. Like, if I'm going to keep doing this, I need to have even a higher and a grander goal to keep my motivation and inspiration going. And so not only am I going to climb, or my attempt is to climb Mount Everest, but to come back down into the death zone at 26,000 feet and then go up and try to climb the 4th highest mountain in the world, which is called Lhotse, and then come down. No NFL player has ever done this. I would be the oldest to actually do those 2. So I'm really motivated.
How old are you, Mark?
I just turned 59, man. Can you believe that?
But you're doing the summits in like whatever, a couple months. Are you going to be 60 when you do them?
No. So I just turned 59 like less than a month ago in December, and so I will be 59. The whole idea when you go to Mount Everest is really this whole notion of going up and down and up and down. And so I leave on March 30th. I land on April 1st in Kathmandu, Nepal. I'll be attacking Everest from the south side. There's the south and the north. The north is controlled by the Chinese, and then I'll probably be going for the summit probably around mid-May, something like that. So it's as much of a physical test as it is a mental test in terms of staying there and thinking about home cooked meals and hot showers and all those things. So that's part of the goal.
I have to be fair. I'm deeply amused by the idea that your 59-year-old self is probably fitter than 15 to 20 of my 42-year-old, 43-year-old self merged together. So I can't even imagine the level of fitness you've had to achieve to do this kind of stuff. Is just mind-boggling. It's good for you.
But I think, one of the things, if we go back to goal setting, and you were very generous to me in terms of setting my whole background up. And I think for me, one of the things that's really helped is my head coach, who was a Hall of Fame in college, Don James, really helped understand John Wooden, who is the famous UCLA head coach, and what his pyramid of success was all about. And when you break it down, it's this 25 different individual and team goals that ultimately get you to the pinnacle of success. And John Wooden was this famous basketball coach at UCLA many years ago, and they won 10 NCAA championships in a row. So he became kind of the guru of how you goal set, you do these things. And he was a really wise guy, read a lot of books. And at the very, very top, and this is where I'm going with all this, the very top, there's the rung, which is the championship of whatever you're trying to do in life, whether it's business or what you do, Freddie, or whether what I'm trying to do right now in the mountains. And that's competitive greatness, right? And when you break down the competitive greatness and all the 25 different building blocks you get up there, it's about loving the process. So you're really good at a business. You're really good in digital media. You're really good at trying to amplify people's brains. And what that really means is that you love the process, you love those blocks, and you have a passion for that. And even though I've had to make a pivot and I work out 3 or 4 hours a day, and for some people are like, you got to be kidding me, and you go 7 days a week, how do you do it? To me, I love that process. That's my passion. That's my passion to keep me, driven, to keep it going, because I can see that big goal out there and what I have to do to put myself in the best position of success to win. You can win that account, you can win that mountain, you can make an NFL team, you can sell a company, whatever you're trying to do, you've got to be in it, because there's going to be tough times. I know I'm going to be on that mountain. I'm going to be questioning myself. I'm going to be low on energy and want to quit. I've got to have something that's going to keep propelling me all the way to the top.
I have to give a quick shout out, by the way, that the comment you just saw on the screen was from Nicole Winhofer. And Nicole, someone in my network who is a fitness kind of guru instructor type, but she's really, really into the spirituality of personal health and not just the kind of raw, athleticism of it. And she's going absolutely bonkers in the chat, kind of giving you all the thumbs up and yeses with all kinds of exclamation points. So you've got someone who really, really on the same wavelength as you watching right now.
Let me speak to Nicole really quick, Freddie, if you don't mind. And I think one of the things is, let's go back 10 years when I was in a lot of pain, and it was probably shortly before you and I met, and I was just really trying to sort out my life, like which way do I go forward? And I know we've all been there. If you live long enough, you're going to go through these periods of time, right? And I got to tell you, and there's 100 different ways to do this. This is just my particular way, which is the meditative process that I felt by being in nature, having my flipping phone turned off, not checking emails every 2 seconds, being in nature, having butterflies and birds come by and chirp, and just, fall back in love with the things that I grew up with and that I knew, and that these tough times pass and you can get through them. But sometimes you just have to stop the train. And so you can get that meditative moment through your head. A lot of people do yoga, they might meditate. It's all good. But I think that's a major component to my healing, to getting me to where I've been in these latter years.
That's awesome. I'm sure she appreciated that reverse shout out back to her. And
love it.
So I'm sure Nicole ended up checking you out. Actually, it's good note for anyone who's watching right now and is intrigued more in your story. What's the best ways that they can follow? Like, what's your Instagram? What's the best social platforms? They want to see photos of your journey, content from your journey. How can people connect with you?
Yeah, you know what? I appreciate you asking me that. And where you can find me, maybe you can put this in the chat box, is www.markpattisonnfl.com. So my name with NFL. And let me tell you something that's really cool. By the way, I've got podcasts up there, and I want to talk about my philanthropy here in a minute. But one of the things that's really cool is that Garmin has a app that we've baked into this, and it's not live right now because I haven't gone anywhere, but you guys will actually be able to track me going up the mountain every single day, going up the mountain. And if you have my cell number, you could actually text me and I could communicate back. So this Garmin device is actually like you're a walking satellite. It's really cool. So, to those people, kind of a live reality show of, is he going to make it or not? Tap in there. So from there, you can bounce into all my social channels, Mark Pattison NFL, throughout a number of different, but the Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff's all there.
On a side note, and we're going to share the link for people watching right now. I do have to quickly share this. So you talking about people tracking you with Garmin, it just made me have a flashback of a story I haven't thought of in a long time. I've told some of you, and I've told you, Mark, of these, that I did the Gumball Rally, that kind of semi-legal car rally race across Europe. And the year that I did it was the first year that they had one of these nav companies kind of sponsor it, and they gave everyone the little nav units, and that you could track all the race car drivers, all the rally car drivers on the website. And we all thought this was the coolest thing ever, until we basically worked out that the cops were also using it, and we couldn't figure out how so many of us kept getting nabbed. And it was because the police were watching the tracking site and using it to figure out where the rally cars were going. And obviously everyone was going just a little bit over the speed limit, and they were picking us all up. So luckily yours will be used for good, but so I couldn't help but think of this when when thinking about tracking people with a GPS.
I got to tell you a quick story, Freddie, if I've got just a second. And I think where people meet success is where preparation meets opportunity, right? And it's when you show up, or going back to that word passion, you're not doing things for the right reason, where people get in real trouble. Go back to 2019. 2019, I was in Antarctica. I was climbing a mountain down there called Vincent Massif. And there's a guy that they had paired me with. His name is Don Cash. And Don was a guy, wonderful person from Salt Lake City. And he's a guy that he wanted to go climb the 7 summits. And then after the 7 summits, he was just going to throw all of his stuff away. And I had this Garmin app, and people could stream and see me going up and down the mountain. And he wasn't aware of this. And so after we got off the mountain and it was successful, he went on to Mount Everest a couple of months later. I went back home thinking I was going to prepare for Mount Everest in 2020. We're obviously here now in 2021. And he never really put in the work. And so on the night that he went for his summit, this is back now in 2019, I was tracking him, and he went to the top barely. You should be able to make it up to the summit roughly in like 8, maybe 10 hours at the most. And he hadn't even made the summit, and it was 18 hours into it. And I knew he was in big trouble, and I was following him again on this Garmin app. And, and again, the common thread is, unfortunately for him, he got to the very top, raised his hand, fell over, and he died, and he's still up on top of Mount Everest. And it's the tragic story of when you don't go all in. With Mount Everest, there's real consequences of not, training in the right way. But for somebody in business or a relationship, if you're not all in, if you're not committed, you're going to run into these walls. And, for him, it was life and death. And for other people, it can just be a crushing blow, or you lose your job or something like that. So it's,
I mean, when you don't go all in on something, your company, when you entrepreneurs, I always feel like you're gambling big. It's not just a job; it's like your whole livelihood in that, and likely that for many other people. When you've got a bunch of employees that you're also responsible for, and when you're only half into something, it can really catch up with you. I do have to ask. That story you just shared is incredibly tragic. It's also pretty scary. What's the scariest thing that you've personally experienced in any of your summoning, is that the right word? Experiences.
It's I would call it mountaineering. I would say this is that I've been in situations where I've been on 45-degree ice walls, having to climb 1,100 feet up. I've had avalanches come, on either side of me coming down the mountain. Those have been a little scary. I've had to climb over very deep crevasses. I've fallen in a crevasse, those things. But the thing that I have had the biggest problem with is having the other people that I don't know that have signed up to go with this expedition group, because I don't organize this myself. There's mountaineers who I know that lead these guides around the world, and that they don't show up and they give up on me. So you're only as strong as your weakest link. So I train like an animal. And some of these other guys just show up and having just been on the Stairmaster or something, thinking that is going to be the magic. That's all they need to do. And then you get in these real situations where it is hairy, and you got to have your stuff together. And I'd say more people than don't have not been prepared for what is asked to be on these types of challenges.
On the far lighter note, I've heard a rumor that going at least to Mount Everest from someone else I know who's made the trek and didn't complete it. He said that everything smells like yak poop. Because burning yak poop to make the fires, because it's one of the few things that you can make into fires. Is that true?
I don't know that. I mean, that's certainly when you go from Lukla, which is about 8,500 feet, and you're making your way up to 17,500 feet, which is where I'll live for 2 months, which is insane to think if you're at, zero, right, sea level, that, the yaks carry a lot of that equipment up there. And so I'm sure they're trying to recycle, the yaks in any way they can, right?
It's probably better to burn it than have it everywhere, frankly. So they said it smells a bit like burnt yak poop. I don't know why that part of the story my friend told me about his, that was the thing that stuck with me, but I just thought it was hilarious.
That's awesome. It's
awesome. You and I try not to prepare people too much for fellowship, before I chat with folks. I do feel like I'd be remiss to not acknowledge, what a pretty tragic day it was in the United States yesterday with the storming of the Capitol. I, like a lot of other Americans, I think were pretty distraught and pretty upset by just what we saw yesterday. And I think that one of the things I'm also a moderate centrist that really likes to try and bring people together, both in my personal life and even when I talk to people about politics, because I think this country in general needs more people trying to find common ground and coming together. And you could argue that this is as big a summit as we could hope to take on right now if we looked at all the challenges in America right now. And so I'd love to hear, from you as a very inspirational guy, what do you think we should be doing to try and come together? How do we conquer this summit? And, is there any thoughts you have on the subject? Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no. I mean, look, I would probably say I'm probably more an independent is my political, because I'm just like, who do I think is the best leader? And I think policies, when you have, the Senate and the House, you've got checks and balances in there that nothing should swing too far this way or that way because of the way the system works.
Compromise is the name of the game.
It's called compromise. You're right. And so therefore you don't end up in a dictatorship. And I've been so blessed to have these great leaders from high school. I'm talking about coaching now, to my Hall of Fame coach, to my NFL coaches, which are Hall of Fame coaches too. And so I've been so blessed to be on, everywhere I've gone, I've been on winning teams. I've never been on a losing team. I don't know what that's like, but I do know that there's a common bond. Success leaves clues. Okay. Mm-hmm. And when you have somebody that's so polarizing and words do matter, I just don't think at the end of the day, you're ever going to find compromise. It's my way or the highway. And to me, it was absolutely disgusting what I saw in terms of organizing, rallying, and then incentivizing this mob scene that then took over the Capitol, right? It's just like, I was embarrassed to be an American. And I think I know we're better than that. I think there's greatness out there, and I welcome the change. And it is what it is. I don't know exactly who won between Gore and Bush, but what Gore didn't do is he didn't storm the Capitol and rally everybody to come and, fight back. That's not the way this whole thing works. Mm-hmm. And it is what it is. And so I'm very hopeful that Biden can unite the country. He seems to be wanting to unify everyone. His personality is set up more that way. And it's just like Trump has become a runaway train. And it's unfortunate because I think his ideas actually, he's got some great business ideas. But, I think it's all the other tweeting that creates so much noise. You forget what he's actually accomplished.
Yeah, I do hope that, everyone in America takes this moment to breathe after yesterday and tries to find some commonality together so we can climb the summit together. Yeah. I'd like to see us, try and find some good things together. You spend a lot of time thinking about this. I know that you've been working on a book. And so what was the title again?
It's Finding Your Summit. It's right here. It's not for. It's something that I had written really a couple of years ago when I was on Denali, and it really is a subset of something that I was thinking about a lot in terms of the pyramid of success, because it's each one of these things that I've done, from playing at a major college like the University of Washington, being drafted, playing in the NFL, started my own companies. I've had two multi-million-dollar companies. One was Front Porch. You mentioned that before. Being in 7 countries, 700 retail locations, selling the company, then moving on and learning about the digital world, and now executive of Sports Illustrated. And they all have a common pattern of what it takes to be successful. And so I just came up with, when I was in the mountains, I was on Denali, I was at 14,200 feet. It's the first time in 2017. And we're stuck. It was minus 40 degrees. I was in a tent. It was snowing like hell. And I came up with this acronym called SUMMITS. And SUMMITS is my definition of how you move something down and how you get unstuck. The S represents the seed. The U represents, you gotta, once you have an idea, you have to unleash it. Then you move it. Then you have to measure it. Then you have to improve on that. And then the T stands for SUMMITS, stands for traverse, right? We're all hit with things along the way. And what do? Do you quit? I mean, you're a master business person, Freddie, and things come up. COVID-19, the world has shifted. You had to pivot. You had to figure out, hey, we were going down this path, but maybe now we have to move over here. And then the S represents, your actual summit, your success. And to me, that's really paying it forward. And I'm doing that in some different ways right now with my climb. But that's what I was working on. And when I'm on Everest, I'll probably shift that a little bit to what this whole experience has been. I've been recording my journey from Kilimanjaro to being on a mountain called Mount Elbrus in Russia, to down in Australia, Kosciuszko, to a mountain in Argentina called Aconcagua, to Denali, had to do that twice, to Antarctica, a mountain called Mount Vincent Massif, to now on to Everest. And it's just been this amazing journey of growth and really just finding my own summit, man. A lot of my life has changed, and it's been an amazing journey.
Well, one thing that really caught my eye about the book is that you listed as a playbook, and not totally unusual. Obviously, other people have the concept of a playbook, but I do think that's really interesting, kind of given your background in sports. And so, is there a style to the way you've written it to try and function less like information and more like very action oriented? Does that make sense?
It's exactly, it's the first page is welcome to base camp, right? And then what do you need when you get to base camp? And what do you got to do? You got to pack your bag. So very metaphorical, and your fuel matters. So, it's not just about climbing. You got to make sure you're putting the right stuff. So if, for example, if you have an alcohol problem, that's going to be an issue in terms of anything that you're trying to do. So it's eating the right foods. It's waking up and having a clear mind, clear heart, clear soul. And then we were talking about the action items, like your body matters. Choose to move on. What are the things you're going to do, right? So I just wrote this thing down. These are the things that I've had to go through. But if everybody has their own goal, and so if that's their own goal, what would you do if you're in that situation based on what you're trying to achieve?
Side note, as you talk about these kind of goals, and you keep mentioning some of these massive mountains, I can't help but think to myself how many times I could probably walk up and down my staircase before I'd be totally winded, and you're out there doing 10-hour mountain treks. I'm guessing six up and down. And I'd be like, I'm going to take a break.
But I got to tell you something. So I'm originally from Seattle, as I mentioned, and I moved out to, it seems like I've lived half my life in Southern California. And 3 years ago, I came to Sun Valley, Idaho, which is where I now reside. And I came over here to ski, and there's really nothing beyond that. And there's a local realtor, and he showed me a house, and I walked in and said, I'm going to buy this thing. And I just literally moved my life here. So the point of the story is, I think that if you're really, truly passionate about what you're trying to go after, when you think about commitment in your relationship, commitment in business, commitment in mountain climbing, commitment to that, I'm going to, make an NFL team. Whatever your thing is, I went from sea level, like you are right now in Hermosa Beach, to Sun Valley, Idaho, which is 6,000 feet. So already I'm acclimating year round. Our mountain, which I climb pretty much every night, to get to the top is a 3,200 foot vertical climb. And so, I commit to climb that every night. When I go to and go for my summit bid on Mount Everest, you sleep at 26,000 feet and you go to 29,000. Now, obviously, it's completely different heights, but the point being is I still have to climb over 3,000 feet. And so I'm training myself. I'm committed to being here. I'm committed to being in a cold place, making yourself uncomfortable to move on and improve on the things that you really want in your life.
By the way, on a side note, I think if I went back and looked at the 40 odd something ships we've got now, you do hear this term sea level a lot, but it's normally done in context of C-suite. And I think this will be the only episode that we constantly refer to sea level as, 0, 0, 0, 0 feet effectively. So Mark, I want to cover two things before we wrap up today. One, I know we want to talk about your philanthropy a little bit, and then so the second one I want to get into just a little bit around, and you can answer these in whatever order you feel comfortable. Is there, have you ever been against something where you felt like you weren't going to be able to reach the summit, where whether that personal, professional, and whether you had to give up because it wasn't achievable, and there's a lesson learned from that, because some things you aren't always achievable, or how you broke through that would be really interesting as well. And I don't think there's any wrong answer on that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I'll start with that one first. When I was going through this tough time, I really had to do it was a deep dive of reflection for me. And one of the things that came out of it was recognizing my greatest strength, which is never giving up. So when I get going on something, I have the blinders and I go and I go and I go and I don't give up, and I'm relentless. And I've got many, many examples around this. And then the more I thought about it, I said, well, what if that's your greatest strength, then what is your greatest weakness? And my greatest weakness is I never give up. And I think the story and the lesson learned out of all this is that there's just sometimes that you have to call it, because it's just not going to happen. And having better checkpoints around like where you at, in an honest assessment of who you are, what you're trying to do, how it's all working. And that's something I think I really had to clean up 10 years ago. Before that, I was just constantly a helicopter and going around. And I think we all kind of fall into that at some point in time in your life, because you're like, I'm going. And you don't really take that time out again to think about what you're really trying to accomplish. In terms of my philanthropy, going back to my Summits acronym, and I talked about when you finally get to a place where you can pay it forward and give back. And I, it's kind of like the old, I know your dad was started an airline, and so you're very familiar with the airline business, but they always say if there's ever a situation where you lose oxygen in that the mask popped down, you don't immediately go and put it on your kid. You put it on your face first, and then you move from there. And so what I've had to do is, as I've been moving through these different evolutions of my life and things I've wanted to achieve, I finally got to a place where I started building my social, and it's slowly built up to over 450,000. I started a podcast called Finding Your Summit, and now I've got over 100,000 downloads, and that's been successful. And that's been great. And as I was climbing, it was just like, my daughter has had epilepsy. Her name is Amelia, and she's had epilepsy for the last 10 plus years. And so last year when I was going to Mount Everest, I started a campaign here in Sun Valley called Amelia's Everest. And so we went out, and I had a bunch of people, Peter Cetera of Chicago and other well-known people come in, and we did this rally, and we raised the 29,000 plus, which represented the height of Mount Everest. And then when Everest got pushed out, I decided to repivot, and we talked about the Lucy Challenge, and so I partnered with a new organization called Higher Ground, and together we've come up with this new challenge to raise $27,940, which represents Lhotse. But really, it's about trying to bring more dollars and awareness towards a higher ground, which helps people with cognitive issues. So it's really taking any light that's coming on me right now. The NFL is behind this, and other big organizations, and redirecting that light towards my daughter. Obviously, I want her to see her healed, but all the other people that are afflicted with their various issues that they have out there. So, altogether, I've raised over 100 grand through this climbing journey. And it's just been amazing to actually work and put my hands. And so it's not just donating money, but being involved. And, and again, at the end of the day, it's trying to get my daughter, well someday. So she's fully functional and we're going from there. So that's been one of the blessings out of this that has arisen from going through this bad time, finding my summit, putting the 7 summits, Mount Everest, everything in front view so that I can help others along the way.
It's awesome, man. Just another example of a really good dude I know you to be. I love seeing the way that you channel that. I think it's amazing, that you care enough about that cause, and obviously, you're a humble enough guy that putting your daughter in the spotlight over you, I think is admirable. And so, hats off to you for doing that. And hats off to you again just for taking even the time to share all this thinking and belief system and experience with all the people in our ship. I'd love to just first off say thank you for coming today. So it's just great to catch up with you. And then for any of you that are watching, show is not something I do for profit. It's something I do just for fun. And I love sharing all these great people with our audience. The best thing you can do to support us, give us a like, give us a share, comment, engage. Any of that kind of stuff helps support the show. And if you want to check out more on Mark, definitely check out his website, markpattison.com. Some great content there, really cool photos, videos, things like that, and a great way to see all the other things that Mark's doing for his podcast and books and things like that. So, Mark, thank you again. Good to see your face. I miss you. I hope to see you in person soon. I hope it's sometime later this year, and we get to run into each other in the city and have dinner and give each other a nice big hug.
Hey, you know what? We need to stay connected when I'm in base camp, smelling all that yak poop, through the fires. We can text back and forth and be connected and do a
yak poop thing. He knew it.
It'll be great. Look forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
All right.
Cheers. Bye.